On the trip to Vietnam, Korea, and the Philippines, we took flights on several airlines. They were Philippine Airlines that code share with American from Orlando to LAX, Bamboo Airlines, and Vietnam Airlines. And I also flew Delta in a weird sequence of events.
So here are the rankings from number 1 to number 5. Yes, this is a count up because the final one was quite a story.
Starting at number 1, Vietnam Airlines. We flew in their business class cabin from Hanoi to Seoul on flight VN414, originally scheduled on an Airbus A359, but it was changed to a 787 Dreamliner. The seating arrangement in business class was a 1-2-1 arrangement in a herringbone layout. I was in 4K and was on the aisle with the console next to the window. Flight time was 4 hours and 15 minutes. The seat was comfortable, with a completely lay-flat arrangement. The entertainment system was large, there was an outlet to plug in devices, and it was easy to get to. It was not buried in some hidden away compartment like I found in other airlines. I was given a menu in Vietnamese, but I had the magic of Google Translate, so I could figure out what to order. So I got the oven roasted chicken with cream of potato soup, and Ramel got the beef with bulgogi sauce. I would say this is not the best that I've ever had, but it wasn't bad either. In fact, it was somewhat unmemorable, but that is better than memorably bad, so I would consider that a win. All in all, on time, good airline, and the best of this trip. At number 2, we have Delta Airlines.
I flew Delta accidentally as a result of what happened on Philippine Airlines. I was supposed to be flying home to Orlando on American, but for whatever reason, Philippine Airlines rebooked me at the last minute on Delta. The Delta first class cabin had a pod feel, but it was quite tight for being in first class. The seats were comfortable, however. Now the only thing is, and I wish the airlines would get this, they had 2 menu choices, which is fine. But one was a kale and chicken salad, and the other was meatballs. Being in row 4, they ran out of the meatballs. By the time they got to me, being quite hungry from the Philippine Airlines mess, I asked for something from the economy cabin. Somehow the flight attendants found another meatball dinner, but it makes me wonder why they do this and have one horribly bad choice and one great choice. And there's not enough servings to make it to the back of the first class cabin. Seriously, kale and chicken salad?
Number 3, American Airlines. We flew American as a code share with Philippine Airlines from Orlando to Los Angeles. They don't have a built-in in-flight entertainment system, so you have to bring a device with you to watch movies and TV. The breakfast was fruit and a charcuterie tray with yogurt. It was fine, no complaints. Generally, though, you just didn't feel anything special or any special attention or engagement with the staff and the flight attendants. They were almost invisible, which was fine, but this is why it's just number 3. It's just an average flight with the averages of averaging. I will say this, though. For numbers 1, 2, and 3, they're pretty close to each other. So depending on the time of day or the day of the week, they could easily flip with each other.
But the next 2, it's a big gap from these 3, for sure.
Now on to number 4, Bamboo Airlines. When we booked tickets, they were flying regionally to places like Taiwan, Singapore, Thailand, and other areas, as well as across Vietnam. Now they're only flying within Vietnam, and that should be a clue. They are a mess. When we arrived at the airport, and on this leg we were flying economy because it was a 2-hour flight from Saigon up to Haiphong, we thought, how bad could it be? Well, bad.
At the airport, when we got to the counter, we were told that our names were in the incorrect order on the ticket. We followed their form on their website, entering our given name and surname into the correct fields. Apparently, they had it messed up in their data system, and so we had to have it corrected. But we had to get out of line and go to a different counter to do this. So we got out of line, went to a second counter, and waited while two agents stared at the screen for about 10 minutes to get it corrected. And that seems like the only thing they were doing, staring at a screen. After it was fixed, we get back in line, get to the counter, jump ahead of everybody else, then weigh our luggage, and it's overweight. Now, we expected this. We knew that was going to happen. So we thought, oh, no problem, we'll pay the extra for the overweight bag charge. But nope, you don't pay at the counter. You have to get out of line, go to another counter where they stare at the screen for 10 minutes so you can pay a grand total of, hold on to something, $10. We get back in line, tell them that we've paid, then they tell us to go to this space at the end of the counter and wait. They don't tell us what it's about. They just tell us we're supposed to wait for 5 minutes. So apparently, you're supposed to watch your luggage go down the belt behind the counter until it goes through the bag check machine, which is security. They didn't tell us why we waited though. However, luckily, security was not bad at Ho Chi Minh. In fact, we had the nicest agents that we've ever met. And it was quick. The guy asked how I was doing, and I asked how he was doing, and I'm gonna tell you, it was legitimate. So it was a nice surprise after the nutties of Bamboo Airlines. And that took all about an hour at the counter going back and forth. So you can see why Bamboo is not long for this world.
And finally, at number 5, Philippine Airlines.
First, they have lost their way.
I have flown Philippine Airlines several times, and they were great. But I should have known something was up when we tried to book tickets online. It was a mess. Couldn't get the connections we needed, and even paying was a problem. The website wouldn't take our credit cards, and this is the only time that I've ever had this happen.
We called them, and it took about 2 hours to book 3 flights. 2 hours, 3 flights. Yeah. I was hoping that this was not a harbinger of things to come. The flight from LAX to Manila was fine, but the entertainment system was broken.
I had to get out of my seat to make any kind of change. Literally had to get out of my seat because of the distance between the seat and the entertainment system. The guy across the aisle, who was quite elderly, had a broken seat, and it could not recline unless flight attendants manually forced the seat up and back.
And they had to do this in the opposite direction, either to get it back into its original position, either for dinner or when we were landing.
The flight from Manila to Ho Chi Minh was also on Philippine Airlines, and it was in economy. I have come to realize that between Bamboo and Philippine Airlines, they make the pitch smaller than on US Airlines. On Seat Guru, it shows a 30-inch pitch on Philippine Airlines. I don't think so. I think it was smaller than 30 inches. We flew them again in business class when we returned to Manila from Seoul. The service was good, the flight was good, the seats were good, and this was the Philippine Airlines of the past. It was what I was expecting with them. But that was not to last.
On the leg home from Manila, after we boarded the plane, we heard an announcement that sounded like we had to deplane. I looked at the flight attendants, and they seemed to be going about their business. I was like, I thought I heard something, but I didn't think it applied because they were acting normal. Oh, it applied all right. 10 minutes later, people started to get off the back of the plane, and we could hear them saying that everybody else had to get off. All right, so we get off the plane, we go back into the gate area, and it was about an hour before finally discovered what the problem was. Now, mind you, we didn't board through the front boarding door. We weren't able to enter, and there were 2 boarding doors. And in fact, the jetway was not also completely closed around the front boarding door. Aha, this should have been a clue. So I went up to one of the 10 gate agents that seemed to be frantically running around the place as if there was like a hurricane or something. And they gave you the impression they were busy, but they never gave us any instructions on what was going on at the gate. So I finally approached somebody, and they said that the boarding door got jammed into the jetway. Some employee brought the jetway up to the plane, opened up the door, and at this point, fuel cargo and people were loaded into the plane, causing the door to sink into the jetway and get jammed and damaged. And we had to wait for about 5 hours for another plane, and still did not get a lot of information from the ground crew at the gate. But they were busy. But I didn't have to worry about this because my connection in Los Angeles was a 13-hour layover, so I thought no problem there, and this delay cut that to 8 hours, so I still had plenty of time. But this saga was not ending. So I get to LAX, I don't have a boarding pass for my connecting flight on American. It takes about 2 hours to get the luggage at LAX. After picking up the luggage, you drop it off at another counter in a transfer area, but I didn't want to drop off the luggage until I had my boarding pass. In the transfer area, there was one occupied counter, and that was of American. There was no one there from Philippine Airlines. So I approached the counter, and there was another lady there having very similar issues. She had already missed her flight. She was told to go up to the 3rd floor at LAX and get a boarding pass from the Philippine Airlines counter. Then the American agent looked up my reservation, but she says it hadn't been paid for. What? She said, follow the lady upstairs. And I go up, I meet her again in front of the Philippine Airlines counter, and the people at the counter at Philippine Airlines say, oh no, we don't help with any inbound flights, we only help with the outbound flights. So they tell us to go back downstairs to the transfer counter, which is behind security. Now there's an agent from Philippine Airlines. Glad they showed up some 2 hours after the plane landed. I gave them my name, and they say, we rebooked you. I'm like, what? They rebooked me on Delta. And that plane was leaving in just 55 minutes. So listen, Philippine Airlines, this is a pro tip. If you're not gonna miss the flight, don't rebook me. And certainly don't rebook me with a tighter connection. Rebook those whose flights were missed. So run to Terminal 3, get to the Delta counter, ask them to make sure that I have TSA pre-check on the boarding pass so I can get through security faster. I then run to the gate, and it's boarding, and I am sweaty, and it's looking like I just mowed the yard here in Orlando. So that is my review of the airlines that we took in Southeast Asia this year. Remember, like and subscribe and watch more of the travel videos that I've got and other random subjects that I post. See you later.